Hey, Angela here with Hot Mess Consulting. Okay, so I just wanted to go over some menu and website organizational tips. How exactly you organize your menu is going to depend on how large your catalog is in actual number of products and how many different product type categories that you have. So I'm going to go over those differences, but some other quick tips first is that whenever possible, I recommend that your main menu is in actually just one line. It's just clean and not overwhelming. And if you do have a ton of different products that you carry or collections, there are still ways to organize it in a way that you can keep it like this, where when you start to get into two lines, it just, again, can overwhelm someone to where they just kind of want to bounce. Literally, that affects your bounce rate. And you just always want to make it as easy as possible for someone to find exactly whatever it is that they may be looking for or wanting right now or didn't know they need in as few clicks as possible. Every single click matters. That said, if you do have a large enough catalog and a large enough number of categories, then you're not going to be able to get away from drop downs, which is going to require an extra click, but it's worth it, and some of this is trial and error, just like everything in business, of adjusting your menu a bit, seeing if that makes a difference, especially if you're driving enough traffic, like we're talking hundreds, thousands of hits a day. Those small things can make a big difference. um, Another thing I don't generally recommend, even though on my own site I've chosen to use the hamburger style menu. I'll go over that at the end, and why I chose this, but normally I wouldn't recommend it, but we'll go over that in a bit. So I want to start with this site that we had recently done a revamp on. And you'll see that this main menu has a lot of stuff, but not many products on the main menu itself, right? So when you hover over shop, then you get to all of these. It looks like kind of a long list. Um, the products just simply aren't the focal point here. That is one of my first big tips, is that the products should always take center stage. Home isn't really needed, because your logo gets you there. If you really want it there, you can, but it's a waste space basically. Um, and then, a lot of this other stuff can all be wrapped up into like more or about us and, everything underneath there. The focus should be your products. So that is one thing that we worked on her menu, is bringing these out to be front and center. And that is absolutely what we recommend. And then she still has a more with all of this good stuff right there, front and center. And then, of course, at the bottom, we also highlight main categories, customer service. This is where we can break it down a little bit more, and people do know to scroll down to the bottom to find things like your socials and policies and all of that good stuff. So that's one tip. Now, if you have a really large catalog, so you'll notice here that these do not have breakdowns. Whether you subcategories or not should have to do with how large your catalog is. So, actually, to hop over here to my site real quick, um, I only sell t-shirts and stickers. That's it. So, I don't need I mean, obviously, well, okay, now, if my catalog, here's the other thing, is that I'm starting this business very slowly. These are all designed in-house. So they're our own unique designs. And so I don't have a ton of designs yet. I just have 2 pages of teas. Now, once I have, I mean, even 2 pages of teas, I could start to break this down a little bit. But I mean, especially like once I have 5 to 10 pages of teas, like I'm going to want to have a filter and set it up in my menu as a drop down where they can choose, what they're all, the teas are all the same, but like what is the category? Is it inspirational? Is it sassy? That holiday, that kind of thing. So if I had more teas, I would be breaking it down further. But yeah, so, and the reason why I chose the hamburger is that actually my menu isn't, I'm not meaning for my menu to be front and center right now. It's also a trial and error thing. It's something to play around with. I will absolutely try a regular menu as well eventually and just see if there's any difference there. But everything that I want them to see is actually front and center already. Like these 4 call outs here, that's a whole nother topic for another day. But On our homepage, the most popular teas are featured, and then they can get to view all teas, and that's kind of it. The stickers were just added as a secondary thing. So that's the only, reason to pull back a menu, is that then they would see I have t-shirts and stickers. Right now, you wouldn't know that looking just at the front here, and since the menu is hidden. So those are all things to consider. But all right, so now we're going to go to a website that we needed to break down because it was such a large catalog. So, and here's the thing is, would I normally recommend bundling clothing all up into one? Not usually, but it depends on the wide variety of things that you carry. A few things to know are, you want to make sure that on your main menu, you are really focused and catered on what sells the most in your online store. This is especially important if you also have a storefront. You might be tempted to think about what you're selling in store, but don't. Online is a whole separate beast, And so you may sell mostly home decor and kids, I don't know, in store. But online, you're selling all women's clothing. If that's the case, your focus here should be women's clothing, and the rest could be in a mega menu. So if you have a lot of different categories, you're going to need to utilize mega menus. So this is a mega menu where it's clothing, and it has the subcategories of tops, bottoms, and dresses, rompers, But then these are even broken down further into a third, and this is much cleaner than if it was just, say bags and it linked off to the side. Like, definitely use a mega menu if you need to. Not if you need to, you should, if you need to break it down into 3 levels. But if clothing were her bread and butter, and she knew that for sure, then these should actually be pulled out into their own, and we should have tried to put everything else into a mega menu instead. But again, this is trial and error. And if your website is new, like you haven't had a website versus your storefront, then you may not know what's going to sell the most online. But in 3 or 6 months, once you do know, come back and reorganize your menu based on what sells the most. And one other thing to note here is, when to subcategories or not, that has to do with how many products you actually have in your catalog. What you don't want are any links on your menu that go to a collection that has like 5 items or less, or that has hundreds of items. If it has hundreds of items, it needs to be subcategorized, and proper filters set up on the collection pages as well. If you have less than 5 items, it probably shouldn't be its own category. It should be lumped in somewhere else, unless it's something that you really cannot lump anywhere else. Sometimes, like, we've seen boutiques that they carry shoes, but they only have like 3 different styles of shoes right now. Okay, but shoes don't fit in anywhere else. They don't fit in with accessories. They don't fit in with, clothing. I mean, they could go under clothing like this, but you wouldn't want, here, socks and shoes. That makes sense, because then maybe the collection's a little bit bigger. You definitely don't have any empty collections. The other thing is, while we're here, this is about collections, but make sure all your collections are sorted by newest first, unless you're being really intentional and doing it manually or something. And then also, I recommend doing automated collections and making sure that you're hiding out of stock items. So when you're doing an automated collection, one of the rules, it would have to meet all rules. And one of the rules would be that inventory quantity is greater than 0. So then if it's sold out, it'll be hidden on your site. Now okay, that's a whole nother thing for another day. Let me get into that in another video. But those are my menu tips.